A few days earlier, Capcom dropped the reveal trailer for RE9, which we expected it for a long time, and it's finally here. I realize I'm a bit late to the party, but we all saw the trailer, right? It doesn't reveal much, but I wanted to make this unscripted video to react to this Luke Stevens video, because he talks about some really interesting stuff. So yeah, let's dive into this.
So I just had the pleasure of seeing Resident Evil Requiem behind closed doors as a part of Summer Games Fest / Playdays, whatever you want to call it, the thing Jeff Keighley runs. And wow, that's first thought, wow. In case you somehow missed it, this was revealed.
She's Grace Ashcroft, our protagonist apparently, so she's confirmed. And you know, a lot of people didn't like the choice. I would say it's still early to judge, right? We don't have a lot of information, so let's just wait and see. For now, as a first impression, I can only say that I quite like her quirky vibe. I think she would make a great fit. Because, you know, we've always had the cool character, the badass character, the mysterious character, so this should be a nice change of pace.
At Summer Games Fest, they had a little fake out where they said, oh, we'll show more when time is right, whatever, don't come at us. And then like 5 minutes later, they actually revealed the full trailer and showed a lot of little bit.
I have to say, man, that troll that Capcom pulled off, yeah, it was a good one.
Things that got old school fans of the franchise excited, but we didn't really get to see an extended look at gameplay. We saw like some little snippets, but not much. However, at Summer Games Fest Playdays, I actually got to go to a behind closed doors.
Well, it's true, the first reveal wasn't exactly what I expected. It was a bit lukewarm, if I'm being honest. It's a 3-minute trailer and the first 2 minutes is just a dialogue in an FBI office. Which, by the way, it's not a bad thing, it's a first reveal. I'm just a bit weirded out, I thought that after 5 years they would show a little bit more. Nonetheless, they showed enough to make me really intrigued.
But we didn't really get to see an extended look at gameplay. We saw like some little snippets, but not much. However, at Summer Games Fest Playdays, I actually got to go to a behind closed doors preview event where Capcom showed us about like 15 to 20 minutes of gameplay of what appeared to be the opening sections of the game. Now, unfortunately, they are not sharing the B-roll or the actual gameplay that we saw. Maybe they do end up showing it later. My guess would be around Gamescom. Maybe right after that, they'll share it with the public. But as of right now, when I'm filming this video, there are no plans to share it with the public that we are aware of. So I'm going to describe it as best I can, and we're going to use B-roll from the trailers and maybe some references to older Resident Evil games. So you'll just have to use your imagination. But there's some big reveals in this that are kind of crazy. The first thing we saw was the new protagonist.
Before diving into this, notice something interesting. The game releases on February 2026, it's confirmed. And we got the reveal trailer in 6 June, which was the Friday of the Summer Game Fest, and just on that event, Capcom had a full 20-25 minute gameplay showcase. Sure, behind closed doors, but they showed it, and they had it ready, which means they've been preparing for this really meticulously. Also, the fact that they're about to release a gameplay demo during the Gamescom in August, it's another green flag. And I wanted to point this out because this is not the way studios did things before. I mean, we've had so many reveals 1, 2, even 3 years before the release. The biggest example I can think of is Cyberpunk, which was a fucking mess. They've learned. This is the best way to put it. They've learned that it's better to wait until you're ready. But I digress.
Some big reveals in this that are kind of crazy. The first thing we saw was the new protagonist, Grace Ashcroft, trying to break free of her restraints on a gurney. This was shown actually.
I just wanted to focus here on the graphics. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's pre-rendered, it's enhanced for the Summer Game Fest, this and that. Sure, I mean, I'm not excluding that, but let's just think about the steps that technology has covered during the last 5 years. I mean, even with day-to-day life, all this AI that we use, I think people take it for granted, and don't you think it's just naive to think that they can't achieve this level of quality? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be skeptical or that when this game releases it won't have any issues. I'm just saying that what reason do we have to negate the possibility of this quality in a game, especially by a studio like Capcom? Just keep that in mind.
Actually in that initial reveal trailer as well. And immediately, the improvements to the RE engine are readily apparent. You know, RE engine hair is very, very unique, and so it's really clear when it's an RE engine game versus not. And
that's exactly what I thought. When they put out the reveal trailer, they did exactly what they did in, what was it? E3 2016? Yeah. When they revealed the RE7 trailer, they did the same thing. Basically, they started the trailer right away with no logos, no tags, no names, nothing. Right about the end, they showed the logo and people went nuts. Especially because, you know, after RE5 and 6, the situation was pretty dismal for the franchise, and the vibes reflected that. So, as I was saying, they did the same with RE9. But right away, I had this feeling that I was watching an RE trailer. It was evident. And that's not a bad thing. It just points out that it has a distinguishable identity visually.
And in this case, I think it still is there. There's something about it that just is very, very unique and doesn't really look like any other engine. But where massive improvements have been made are in the little bitty animation details. Like every little element has been carefully animated, even down to like when Grace is laying on the gurney upside down and she's breathing heavily. Her stomach is not just like going in and out, breathing like, you know, something basic. It's actually moving and contorting with the muscles contracting like asynchronously, just like when an actual human being breathes. It's like little bitty details that just make it look way more believable, way more realistic. Little twitches in the eyes or gritting of the teeth and the cheeks. Everything is just so finely detailed. It's really impressive. And that also applies to monsters and things, which we'll get to in a minute, because damn. The other thing I will say...
So, he talked about the detail in the animations and in the breathing aspect especially. Now, I'm guessing that the detail is brought also by the sound design, and I want to point this out because usually sound design is something that goes behind the curtains and it's not awfully praised as much as it should, in my opinion. You know, when I played RE7, especially during the first time, because I played it like 4 times at this point, but the sound design, man, even the little things, like, for example, when you were running with your shotgun in your hands, you could hear the gauge jumping up and down, and it's things like this, in my opinion, that take you inside the game. Now, multiply that for every gun, for every action, for every animation, every character, every situation, and well, you get an immersive experience, my friends. So I'm really happy to hear the same things for RE9, especially considering the potential improvements that the RE engine has gotten from Capcom.
In this opening sequence is the voice actress. This has been debated since the trailer dropped. Some people have alleged maybe it's the original voice actress for Alyssa. Maybe it's one of the voice actresses who played Claire. People have gone back and forth on it, trying to figure out who this is. I actually think it sounded a lot like Ashley Johnson, personally, specifically the gameplay portions, like when she was grunting, running away from the monster, we'll discuss in a minute, things like that. It sounded like Ashley Johnson, which, if you're not familiar, she played Ellie in The Last of Us. Very well, maybe somebody else. Either way, whoever...
I mean, look, guys, it's a really important title, okay? Just because of the franchise name, but especially this title. A lot of people were a bit disappointed, let's say, with RE8, me included. For a bunch of reasons that I won't get into right now, but that's not the point. The point is that Capcom had to deliver, and the first step was actually getting Koshi Nakanishi yet again, the guy who directed RE7. And in my opinion, they did the right thing. Now, as far as voice acting, I loved it in RE7. Even in RE8, heck, I can still hear Dimitrescu's voice in my head, Jesus. But if you ever doubted that they would neglect the voice acting in this title, you're a moron. Alright, let's keep going.
Whoever the voice actress is doing a fantastic job. I mean, it's just stellar world-class work as far as I'm concerned from what I've seen so far. They're doing very, very good. So rest assured, it's gonna be solidly voice acted either which way. Whoever is performing Grace is doing a great job. But regardless, after Grace breaks...
Sorry to stop so often, guys, but there's so much to talk. And this hall is maybe my favorite part of the trailer, for a lot of reasons. One, the callback to RE7. It's not that hall, but it's that hall, if you know what I mean. The atmosphere is all there. The claustrophobia, the darkness, the eeriness. It's crazy what lighting, what a certain way of putting things together can do. This is the result. The second reason, well, simply put, the detail. I mean, look at it, guys. You don't even need to strain your eyes that much to see the detail. And this is just to show that the RE engine has made gigantic steps from the last game. Sure, you might say it's just a hull. Well, guys, it's the first reveal. They can't show all of it yet. They just have to show little snippets here and there. The third reason, alright, you have to understand something. When a studio does a reveal trailer, especially on this level of a franchise, they craft it with a maddening level of detail, just because they want to send the right message. And one of the big complaints coming from RE8 was the lack of horror. And yeah, I agree with that. So they had to tackle that issue right away. And is there a better way than to show what has worked in the past? In my opinion, no. In this hallway they show exactly what people loved from RE7 and some small sections of RE8, namely the dollhouse section, which I loved, by the way. But the point is, they know what they're doing here, alright? This is not coincidence. Every scene, every frame has a purpose.
Free of her restraints, you open up into the early section of the game where you're exploring what could be a house or a hospital. It's not clear very intentionally. It's very vague where you are or what's going on. But it was very reminiscent of Resident Evil 7. And that's what everybody around me also said when we were like funneling out of the little theater after we saw this. Everybody was like, it felt very much like 7. It felt like 7 again, didn't it? And I think that's a good thing. Personally, I love 7. 7 is it's what kickstarted the modern era of Resident Evil and kind of introduced it to a whole new generation of gamers. And
Exactly. This is a really important point here. RE7, it's not only a turning point for the franchise, technically or creatively, but it's a starting point for new players. I actually am one of those. I had never played a Resident Evil game. That was my first one, and it was interesting actually because, you know, the game released on 2017, but I didn't play it until, what was it? I can't even remember now, but it was probably around 2022 or 23, something like that. And before playing it myself, I had watched a full playthrough on YouTube at least twice, maybe even 3 times. So you might say, oh well, that's a bummer. You know the game by heart, so there's no point in playing it. And that's what I thought. Quickly, I found out how wrong I was. And from that moment, I just saw horror differently. I remember finishing the game and thinking, this is how good horror feels like. It almost felt like a love-hate relationship. I dreaded going through that game. And after finishing it, I wanted to replay it right away. But at the same time, I wanted to wait. No. That's enough for now. What I'm getting at is that was the game that got me into this genre. And from that moment forward, I had to find out everything about this franchise. And well, I simply never looked back.
In a lot of ways, after some rough games and like movie attempts and stuff. So 7, for a lot of people, they love it dearly. And I'm one of those people. And so to see that it feels and plays much closer to 7 than 8, I personally appreciate. 8 experimented with some bigger levels, with more open-ended design, with some like sort of open world stuff, but not really. Like it was just very, very different. And it's...
Yeah, in my book, different is bad, at least in that context. Yeah, the game expanded, alright, but the horror suffered, man. Seriously. I mean, it wasn't the previous experience. Not even close.
Especially like the later sections, which turned into like a weird Call of Duty mission, I just didn't connect with. So I'm excited to see that they're kind of returning to form and going back to the basics with survival horror. What they described it though as was as addictive horror or horror exploring addiction. It was kind of tough to get exactly what they were trying to describe because I think there was a bit of a language barrier, at least with our description that we received. But either way, it seems like they're exploring some fun ideas, and 7 is certainly where they're focusing a lot of their inspirations. Everything from creeping through the corridors, crouching around looking for the key or the fuse to put in the fuse box to unlock the door, all of that will be reminiscent not just of 7, but of older Resi games as well. But in terms of immediately like the gut feeling it gave, it felt like 7 much more than anything else. What didn't feel like 7 though was the introduction to the first spooky, ghouly, ghosty monster. I won't spoil exactly how it's introduced because if you play the game, I want that jump scare sort of thing to be something you get to experience for the first time because it was very cool and very well done. But once you see the monster, it's a very different kind of thing than we saw in 7 traditionally with the family. And it's closer to like typical like horrifying monster, very, very distended and macabre and falling apart. Looks like a Bloodborne boss, basically, is what this monster looked like. But she started like chasing this humanoid monster filled with bulbous, pus-filled whatever the hells. She started following us through the house. And what was crazy is like the monster was big enough that she didn't fit through the doorways, and watching like the camera pan back and seeing the monster like contort to squeeze through the doorway was really, really cool. It's kind of like in, I think it was It Chapter 2, the like.
As much as I love RE7 and as much as I'm glad that we're getting that atmosphere back, I don't want RE9 to be a carbon copy of that game. So hearing that monsters are gonna be different, that just makes me happy. He said that the reveal is gonna be more reminiscent to traditional horror, let's put it that way. And what I'm guessing is they want to bring together all the different factions of the audience. Because you see, RE7, especially RE8, divided a lot. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just what happened. And maybe doing things a bit more traditionally, at least for a portion of the game, might be a healthy thing for the franchise. And he mentioned about contorting. I mean, let's look at this, right? So, where was it? Alright. This is the monster, presumably. Now, notice how big this is, man. This should be at least 3 meters. Luke talked about contorting through doors. Just think about that visually. It's amazing. If we think about Jack Baker or Mr. X, Lady D, the usual way they do stalker characters basically. They usually stalk you by walking. Imagine a big monster stalking you while crawling through doorways in this type of hallway, in this type of, what is it? I don't know, a hospital, a mental house, we don't know yet. Just imagine that.
First spooky, ghouly, ghosty monster jump scare sort of thing to be something you get to experience for the first time because it was very cool and very well done. But once you see the monster, it's a very different kind of thing than we saw in 7 traditionally with the family. And it's closer to like typical like horrifying monster, very, very distended and macabre and falling apart. Looks like a Bloodborne boss, basically, is what the...
Now, I haven't yet played Bloodborne. Red flag, I know, but look, give me a break, man. Sony isn't doing a PC port of that thing, so I can't play it yet. One thing I know about Bloodborne is that people call it a masterpiece. And usually when you call something a masterpiece, means that every aspect is, well, perfect. Which also means monster designs are perfect for that context. And well, if you think about it, a Bloodborne context from an RE context, they're not that different if you think about it. So hearing that this RE9 monster looks like a Bloodborne monster, how can that not hype you up, man?
This monster looked like. But she stole whatever was really, really cool. It's kind of like in, I think it was It Chapter 2, the like movie. There's that one portion where Beverly goes back to her childhood apartment and then the old lady turns into a monster and kind of starts chasing her and squeezing under the banister and stuff. It felt like that. It was a similar vibe to that monster, to this one. This one's much more grotesque and stuff, but it was a similar vibe. But regardless, you're running away from this monster. It's able to jump into the ceiling and climb through the ceiling. It's able to like affect the lights and things. But this is where this like the next really crazy impressive thing stood out to me, which was the sound design. I'm not sure if it's just because we were in like a purpose-built theater that was filled with like a beautiful micro LED screen in front of us that was like 15 feet wide, and then surround sound speakers that again were purpose-built and purpose-calibrated for what we were doing. But whatever the cause, it was so immersive. Like every little gurgle, crackle, clenching of the monster's teeth, everything was recorded and was very well balanced and just extremely immersive. It's very, very well done again. The sound design in horror games is crucial. It's crucial in horror movies. It's just a very important element. Like the visual aspect of horror is important, but the sound is often what pierces deep into your bones. And so you need to have it done really well.
Exactly. So I already talked about this previously, but I just want to re-emphasize it that it's so important, maybe even more important than the visual aspect. If you get the sound design right, you're in for a treat, and it looks like we're getting it, which makes me so happy.
And in this case, they've done a very good job of it as far as I can tell. And it's definitely a game you're going to want to play with surround sound or, you know, certainly a nice pair of headphones if you have them. But that being said, we got to see some of the first kind of waves of gameplay where you're going and you got to find the key to unlock this door, and then within that room is a fuse, and you need that fuse to unlock the fuse box and to power the door back up so that you can squeeze under it and escape the monster before you get to the next area, which has its own set of obstacles as you work your way through. And again, it felt very much like 7. Now, there's a lot we did not see. There's a lot. We saw the gameplay go through running away from the monster as it's chasing you, hiding, stealthing around, and then getting through that door with the fuse, and then the demo was pretty much over. But there's a lot we did not see. We didn't see Raccoon City. We didn't see exploration of other areas. We saw a very tight corridor area that was again very similar to the opening house section in 7. That being said, at the very end of the demo, we all are like,
so them not revealing much, I agree. Oftentimes a game is overmarketed, overhyped, and well, those same times it often underdelivers. And that's the last thing Capcom wants for RE9. Rest assured about that, so they know what they're doing here. With that said, I would even argue, man, did they really show that little? I mean, we got a 3-minute trailer, first of all. Second, they did a gameplay showcase. Sure, it was done behind closed doors, but I think it's safe to say that they're going to publicly release it really soon. I mean, they have to, because during August there's the Gamescom, so we're gonna see it sooner or later.
Wow, that was very good. We're laughing and like, oh, that was crazy, that was crazy. And then the demoist is like, hold on, there's one more thing. And we see them hit escape, or not hit escape, but like in the game footage we're watching, the person hits escape, they pull open the menu, and I was like, what are they doing? What are they doing? Are they just gonna show us it supports DLSS or something? Like, what are they doing? Why are they going into the menu? And they go down to like view options, and they toggle it to third person mode. This game will support a full run through in third person or first person, and you can even hot swap between the two at any point using that menu. So if you want to play your Resident Evil games in third person, you can do that, or first person, you can do that. Or if you want to just do the boss fights in third person, but then everything else in first, you can do that. You can pick and choose. It's fully supported natively. It's very, very seamless. Like you just hit the toggle and it swaps. It's very cool. So
Now, this is big. RE7 was a first-person game, and in my opinion, it was the right approach for that kind of game. But as you know, a lot of people were mad. They wanted the third-person perspective. The same goes for RE8. And, well, one might say, why not add both perspectives? Now, I'm not a game designer, but my guess would be that when you design a game, you design it with a framework in mind, and part of that framework is, well, the perspective, the way the player experiences the game. So I don't think is as easy as a switch of a button when you develop the game, I mean. So Capcom not doing that with RE7 or 8 on release is probably because of technical limitations of the engine. They probably needed the time to perfect the technology, so that's my guess. That being said, they did the right thing by including this feature in RE9. I can't stress that enough. Just simply because it's something that brings people together. It was a big topic, it was a big dividing topic, and at the end of the day, why not have both options? Sure, I might generally prefer the first-person perspective in these games, but in certain sections I may prefer to use the third-person one. Another player that usually uses the third person might want to switch to first person, so it goes both ways. And the fact they added it, it's only a good thing in my opinion. With that feature in place, one risk I would say is breaking the atmosphere, the immersion. And thinking about it this way, it probably was a difficult nut to crack. You can do that in any point of the game. And assuming that the game is gonna be at least 15 hours, well, that's not something easy to pull off. If you want to keep the horror, the tension, the fear, the atmosphere, basically everything regarding the immersion level, it's not easy.
I'm here for it. It's not quite as silky smooth as like some games, even like Bethesda games where you tap on the right stick or something and then it pulls back to third person. You do have to go into a menu. But seeing that they now are supporting that fully throughout the entire game, that's pretty damn cool. But overall, what I saw was very impressive. I mean, the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that the ray trace lighting, which is another one of the overhauls that the RE engine has seemingly received, makes a difference here. I mean, notably, there was one moment where there's sort of a hallway corridor, similar.
I mean, yeah, ray tracing always looks great, if you have the hardware, obviously, which most people don't. But you know, if you have the money to get yourself a nice GPU, that's always great to hear.
Notably, there was one moment where there's sort of a hallway corridor, similar to this. Like imagine there's a big, scary, horrifying monster standing in this little doorway, this threshold right there. And then there's a massive puddle of blood right in here, okay? Massive puddle of blood because something may or may not have happened there. With traditional lighting techniques and rendering techniques, you would just kind of have the monster lit from whatever the key light is. In this case, there was a light right above the doorway, like right there, shining down on top of the monster. And you would just have like harsh light on the top and then dark underneath. But with ray trace lighting, what they're able to do then is have the light bounce off of the blood puddle and then back up on the underside of the monster. So as it's walking in this bloody puddle and the blood is rippling underneath its toes, you actually see the underlighting of a faint red glow from the ray traced lighting that is picking up basically and reflecting red light back up on the underside of the monster. And it makes one hell of a difference. I'll tell you what, it really, really does. I know we all joke and meme that like, give me better frame rates over ray tracing any day. And I think for a lot of people that is the case. They would just much rather have that. But a lot of that is because we haven't seen games really implement ray tracing in significantly transformative ways. You know, you see ray tracing in Cyberpunk with, path tracing or something, and you're like, oh, I get it. Yeah, if I had a supercomputer, I can understand why that would be cool. But for the average consumer, it's just not that practical. But in this case, it is actually just an immediately very clear, visible change that is significantly better than previous iterations of the RE engine. The RE engine, of course, still has like its very unique hair system that's just very recognizable. It's not bad. It's just very, very unique. I can't even put my finger on it, but
yeah, I actually saw a bunch of opinions online criticizing the hair animation, like the hair. I mean, I'm not saying it's not important, and I'm not saying there aren't bad cases of that happening, but where in that trailer do you see bad hair animations? I mean, I'm not saying it's like real hair. I'm not even saying that it's GTA 6 level hair animation. I'm just saying, was it really bad hair animation? I mean, I swear man, some people just want to trash on something just for the love of doing it, just for sport.
It's very unique. It still looks like a Resident Evil game. And like the wood floors look great. The wallpaper looks great. The monster looks horrifying. And that fine animation detail not just applies to like the characters and the NPCs and cutscenes, but it also applies to the monsters with like their eyes twitching and their mouths twitching and the blood dripping from its teeth very, very carefully. Apparently Capcom is not restraining from gore, which,
depending on how you look at it, is either a bad or a good thing. I'm just pointing that out. Do with that information what you will.
And each one of the little pustules like quivering and pulsating as damage is dealt to it or as it pushes through a doorway. Like every little aspect of it is so well done, and they've put a lot of effort into it. I mean, they've not been slacking for sure, and I'm here for it. Just across the board, it looked really good, and it got me really excited for what they have to bring to the table. I also, because I'm me, I was looking for any red flags, any weird things with like performance or hitching or frame drops or overuse of upsamplers and stuff, upscalers rather, and I didn't see any of it. The game looked very sharp, very clean. They wouldn't tell us, of course, what hardware they were running.
Well, yeah, it looks sharp, it looks clean. Overall, it looks great, man. Nothing to say about that.
But what we saw was very polished and looked really good. Again,
I mean, hey, that looks polished.
it was on like a 15-foot wide screen that was like full 4K. Like if there were problems, we would have been able to see it. And I'm hard pressed to come up with anything. It just looked great. So initially I was like kind of suspicious and skeptical of releasing in February of next year. I was like, yeah, that would be ideal, but what are the odds you're gonna have to delay it? Because like that's the goal, but development issues or whatever. But no, after seeing it in this behind closed doors preview demo thing, I'm a believer. I think that they actually are.
Yeah, this is a massive issue with games today. Often they don't take the time to polish it and they release a broken mess. A broken mess which you pay with a full price, by the way, so definitely not a good thing. But from what I can tell with RE9, they will be ready. I mean, they were ready with the last two games, so there's no reason for me to doubt it. The precedents speak for themselves, and that's all we need.
On the right track, and I think they'll
So, skeptical but optimistic.
be able to hit that if this is truly indicative of the quality that they've been able to hit. So I'm here for it. I'm here for it. As always, I can't wait to talk about it more. I hope they make this gameplay demo available to everybody relatively soon so you can see what we saw, because it's super cool and they should be proud of it. And I think it is only a matter of time. I think they will.
They should be proud of it. I mean, as far as we've seen right now, it looks promising. It looks impressive, even just technically. But I'm sure the more we get, the more impressed we'll be.
Release it to the public probably in like a month or two, but time will tell. But as always, if you have any questions about what we saw, just ask away in either the comments section. If I see it, I'll reply, or over on Luke Stevens Live, my live channel where we stream and hang out. You can just pop into chat and ask me a question about it. And if I can answer, I will answer. But all told, it was really cool. It was an awesome time. Thank you, Capcom, for seeing that. And yeah, I think this could be a pretty special game for early next year. So buckle up. Thank you for watching, everybody. Until next time, hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.
Buckle up indeed.